Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you gotta get spotted. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. Hold on. Where's our music? All right. So it is Monday, and last week we were kind of hampered by the options. This week things are a little bit more free to move, but we do have some significant events and so forth. So let's go to the charts first. We do have some rollovers here. Looks like 6C. So when we start with the ZN, there was a little bit of a move down overnight. Once again, it just looks like rates are kind of on the rise. We're at 3.33 now, so it's only about 3 basis points. S&P taking a puke at the moment. Not quite sure what that is. This move here, I think a lot of that was just the options coming back to where the majority of the interest was at 4,500. The problem now is that they are free. There's kind of that rollover gap. I think that they might try and close that today is kind of the scenario that I'm looking at, as all of these people dumped the stocks that they had bought for hedging the options. Oil continues on the upside, and they are back above $90 after having a pretty ugly downside move late Friday, but they easily recovered all of that and are back above $90. Gold and silver also having recovered a little bit, even though the treasuries are still kind of pushing down, which I find really curious. And Kappa just kind of trudging along sideways for the moment. Coming over to the currencies, Bitcoin is really trying hard to make a push. And it looks like Michael Saylor is buying again. In fact, he's going to buy $700 million more by selling shares of his company, selling stock, which is not actually a good thing. That's like really like they're doubling down. They're running out of options. And what happens when he can't buy more? If Bitcoin doesn't come back up, he's like really screwed, right? But maybe it worked out for him. And here is the dollar. The dollar back below 105 this morning. Okay, so I said that we've got some events this week. And the big event is that there is a Federal Reserve meeting on Wednesday. So this morning we might see some interesting behavior. Tomorrow things might be a little quiet, and then we get back into the Federal Reserve meeting. Although note that something that will happen on Federal Reserve weeks is that the treasuries will make these like magical moves that is just like they know what's going to happen. So we'll see. For the moment, they're actually kind of on the upside here in the treasuries, although there was some selling a little bit earlier that didn't affect price. So I'm a little bit neutral on where the actual orders are going at the moment. But I was kind of suspecting that we would get selling. I was definitely thinking that we would get selling in the S&P 500. Is the 10 points that we lost here this morning enough? Probably not. Probably what happens is they sell after the equities open. So keep an eye out for that. It doesn't always happen, but the gamma unclenching can be like a really solid trade. Where's the screens? What are you talking about? We got everything's good. Everything's good. That's even more confusing. Just showing your old photo. Okay, whatever. Let's real quick come over here, see if there's anything interesting on the Twitters. Only 10% of the academic macroeconomists surveyed by the Financial Times Chicago Booth poll think the Fed is done with hikes, and 43% expect 2+ hikes. This is greater than iBank economists' market forecasts and the Fed SAP. That is very interesting. Okay. Okay, apparently, they do have a... No, the only story I see is Turley slams Smith's narrowly tailored motion to silence Trump. Does it no longer have my big picture at the top on the page? That's curious. I don't know, it's still there. I still don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so we do have a story to read here. Also, TSMC instructs suppliers to delay chip equipment delivery, report says. However, the strength in demand for AI chips is not strong enough to compensate. Okay, that could certainly hurt the S&P rally that has been based so much on that. Okay. Equity futures were flat for much of the session before taking a leg lower into the red with treasury yields ticking higher. Oh, wait, this is just the day... Yeah, we're not going to read that. That's just news squawks. That would take way too long for us to read. You can go read that one. This guy's asking me about DXFeed and Bookmap, and I don't know. Maybe it works with it. Okay, so let's see here. There was a little pop in oil. You know, it seems like a theme. Like, I will forget about oil through most of the session, you know? But then when I come here at the very beginning of the day, it's always like, man, is oil just going to be everything over the next quarter? Because it really kind of feels like that at some point, the price of oil gets so high that it just starts wrecking everything else, and they end up pushing interest rates higher. You know, one of the things that I saw, there's this funny, okay, so Paul Krugman, y'all know this hack. He is totally a hack. And he tweeted the other day, oh, hey, you know, inflation looks high, but so I'm using this alternate measure that doesn't have food, energy, or shelter costs. So basically like 75% of the CPI components taken out of it. And of course it shows that, oh yes, inflation has come down considerably. Well, he was getting lambasted on Twitter. Like there's this image that's like, there's the frog of shame that's like, if this frog gets more upvotes than the original post, then that means that your post was really bad. And Paul Krugman himself has like 2,000 likes and the frog has like 5,000 likes. So everybody's bashing him for it, right? But I think one of the things to remember is that the Federal Reserve pays more attention to core CPI, because core CPI is more indicative of where inflation is headed in the future and what the Federal Reserve is going to do. It's better of a predictive sort of piece of information, okay? And then on top of that, we know that the shelter is lagged. Instead of just pulling shelter out, I think it would make more sense to just use a less lagging indicator, okay? But so if we want to predict what the Federal Reserve is going to do and where inflation is heading, it's actually not a crazy idea to take those components out and look at it. And what does it show? Well, it shows that inflation has come back, but it also shows that like on that measure, that inflation is still like 3%. So there's kind of these two things that are going on here, right? One is that we didn't defeat inflation, but there's still more than 2% per year. Just like all these people have been saying for a long time, and the Federal Reserve has pushed back and are like, we're not going to change the inflation target, but they're all saying it's going to be 3% for a few years and not 2%. That's a problem. Is the Federal Reserve going to continue hiking and get aggressive to get us back to 3%? And then on top of all of that, we've got oil going off. And so the combination of those two things, I think this scenario where inflation comes back and let's not even say it comes back, but just like it becomes a concern for the market again, I really think it's going to happen in the next quarter. And that is perhaps why over the past week or so, the treasuries have turned a little more hawkish. Treasuries have been selling a little bit more. Now, this morning, I would have thought that I would see some flows kind of suggesting a particular direction based on options and preparing for the Federal Reserve meeting on Wednesday and all of that. But so far, it doesn't seem like we're seeing it. I'm not going to rule anything out because sometimes you don't see those things until, a little bit later. But, I think we could probably give it another 10, 15 minutes. And if I don't see any kind of real clear flow, then that means that it's not happening. And so that means that we may be waiting. We may be on hold till the Federal Reserve meeting in our treasuries. But we should still get some interesting action in the E-mini, huh? Told you before, we'll all be oil traders. Yeah. I mean, we haven't gotten to the point where the treasuries directly, because I remember when oil went off before. I remember there being a few moves where we were like, it kind of looks like there's a little bit of correlation with oil and the treasuries. But it never like really took hold, even despite it going all the way up. So, that doesn't mean that it couldn't happen this time, though. And that's kind of the interesting question is, do we get to a spot where there's like a really high correlation with oil over in the treasuries? That would make things really interesting. It would make things really difficult. It would be really difficult to trade on our part, wouldn't it? Because how would you sort out if a move was driven by currencies or oil? If both of them moved, which I think that in a situation like that would happen, like both of them would move. Think on that one for a moment. I think it's good time for a commercial break. Get that in here early so that YouTube likes us. I wish there was a way for me to see how many of you guys don't actually get the commercial breaks. That would be funny. That would be interesting. It wouldn't be funny. It would be interesting. Well, the treasuries turned back down there really quickly, and there was some selling on it, so maybe it is going to happen. I don't know. It's not enough volume-wise alone for me, but just the fact that it's coming down and that it did so quickly and the time frame and everything kind of has me thinking. Now, the other thing, though, is that the dollar is going up here. Oh, yeah. If everybody in chat just says, oh, I see it or I don't see it. I really do wonder. So, like, normally our viewership goes down in the summer. There are just a few guys that are regular traders and regular watchers of the stream that aren't here in the summer, and then they come back in the fall. So usually our viewership does go down in the summer and come back in the fall. And normally, like, during good times of the year, we're like 24 to 32 viewers. We haven't been like, we usually will get to 32 viewers in the stream, but it won't be like we'll get there and then stay there like we used to. And so I'm kind of wondering, is the 32 just seasonality, or is it because of displaying the ads? And then the days where I didn't display the ads, the viewership was down. So it's kind of paradoxical, and I don't think that I have enough data to really prove anything, but it sure seems to me like YouTube is more likely to recommend the stream to people when I regularly insert ads. Seems to be the case to me, and I don't know what to make of that. There is definitely something where, like, in 2021, there was this shift where YouTube was recommending live streams a lot more. And then there was the whole GameStop thing, and the channel like blew up, for a week, and then after a week it was back to normal levels. But then shortly after that, like, YouTube changed the algorithm, and then it was like we didn't get viewers at all. It went back to just the guys that have the permanent live stream URL like bookmarked, and you're here every day. The Matrix is everywhere. It is a little disheartening that, like, to feel like that how good you are doing at something has absolutely no impact on how successful that you are with it, Because I really feel like that a lot with social media, that, like, especially TikTok. I'm like, it doesn't matter that I'm making good, engaging content that people want to see regularly. The algorithm doesn't show it. Most of the time, the algorithm just doesn't attach on our content. And so when a video on TikTok does go off, that's just the algorithm throwing you a bone every once in a while so that you keep posting. But it never results in long-term success. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've been at it for a long time pretty consistently, and everything that I see, especially here on YouTube, is like the number of people that watch the stream is very dependent on how likely YouTube is to recommend our stream. You could also see where, like, when other people started streaming, viewership went down. That was another thing. That happened. So we came back down to this lower end of the range. They're not pushing. Like, they gave just enough of a bump there to make me think that something was happening, and then it didn't do anything. So I'm a little suspicious at this point about that one. Maybe they came down there so that I can jump on board. They're like, okay, Seth, like, they would give you enough so that you would get in. We will wait for you. But I don't think I can do it. This sucks, because if I take it here, I'm getting the bottom of the range, right? Which isn't a very good price. If I wait and let it go, I might not be able to get in until like 09.5. And by that point, I'm getting in already in a spot where it's likely to, stop and pause. So I see possible movement here, but I'm not very confident in my ability to really take advantage of it. He says, same here, I'm skeptical. Yeah. Well, it was only like, how many contracts was it? was like 2,000 contracts net to take us to the bottom of this range. And then it just stopped. That seems suspicious. That seems more like, oh, Seth came in and said he's looking short, but he doesn't see the volume to support it. Well, let's just, let's just take a little short here and see if he bites. Let it come down to the bottom, see if he bites. It sure feels like that to me. I'm pretty confident that there's going to be some gamma unclenching over here in the S&P 500. I'm just wondering that if, because we had that decline on Friday going into the 4,500, if that blunts it somewhat. I think sharing videos and other things on any platform will increase numbers. If I was like live streaming on Rumble, I would probably get additional views from that, yes. But to be honest with you, I haven't bothered because I'm really skeptical that the audience that I'm looking for regularly watches Rumble. I think that the people that watch Rumble will only want to come in and talk about how we should move back to a gold standard currency. And that's why I've been like, maybe not. You watch sumo tournaments on Rumble? Ooh, that actually might sound fun. I don't know. Every time that I go to here, let's explore for a moment. There was a tick up. There's a tick down, tick up. I am really weary of overly ideological social media content. Let's put it that way. Are we under a coordinated attack? Oh, because there was a scandal with Lauren Boebert. And Lauren and who's this guy? Russell Brand. Yes, there was some women accused Russell Brand of assaulting them. Yeah. Wow. Boebert got her booberts felt up. Yes. That's exact. You know what? I didn't get it. I really didn't get it. It was like, so she went to a movie theater to watch a movie with a guy, and the guy felt her boobs, and then she said that was not in line with her values or something like that. And this is like this big scandal, and I'm just kind of like, I don't understand. Like, was the Beetlejuice musical? I just don't understand, like, how that would even get out. Like, wait. The dude that felt her up owns a gay bar? Really? Well, now that seems kind of weird. Her date? Oh, wow, that's weird. What? That's weird. You know, okay. This just reminds me of something. I don't know if I should really talk about this or not. I'm gonna talk about it. Okay. On the yesterday, there was this, people will post like their stats on Tinder, like this is how many swipes and matches and dates and all of this other information that you got, right? And this girl unironically posted her stats, and it was like literally 22,000 swipes no and only like 300 swipes yes. I'm like, what? Like, how could you, why would you post that yourself? Like, are the women that out of touch with what's going on in the dating market and stuff? But I can't believe that that's the case, because the thing is yes, there is an epidemic of lonely men going on out there, but there is also an epidemic of single women out there. Hey, look, they took it another step or two further, so maybe it is well, and now there is some liquidity and they're pushing through it. So this is like I was saying, that like now you come into a spot where there's that liquidity at 09.5, and I don't necessarily want to hit into that. Anyways, there's an epidemic of single women, and so one would have to think that, there would be women that are also saying like dating is messed up and we got to do something about it. So then I started looking at this other thing. So there was a post like last Friday that was like, well, I don't understand, why is it that the onus is on women? Well, I don't think that necessarily it is, but I can tell you why. When I say that it is, I don't think that it should be, but I can tell you why people talk that way. Because most people think that the reason that the dating market is the way it is because of the introduction of online dating. They think that it's online dating that's causing it, right? So women get too picky because of the attention that they get on social media, and then they never end up settling down. That's what most people think that it is, right? I don't think that matches up with the data, though. Lows are heavy, yeah. Well, there's a lot of absorption down in here, at least. The market makers were willing to take it, and the market orders were more than willing to push through it. So that kind of suggests to me that there could be some more, and that does end up being about 5,000 contracts short. I don't like the location, but it seems like that there's an overall sell. Yeah, so here's the thing, is if it was online dating, then wouldn't you see a rise in single people after the advent of online dating? But when I go and I look at the data, what I see is that the number of single people has just been steadily rising since the 50s. Like the 50s and particularly the 70s was like when things really, really shifted, right? So this theory, well, and the other thing was that one thing was, okay, so men think that it's the advent of online dating. Women think that it's because women have more options, like they work more, and so their standards are higher. They don't have to settle for a guy just to be able to live, so they wait around for the guy that they really want, and so they think that because of the freedom and egalitarianism and so forth, that women are, expect a higher standard, and then men have to rise to meet that standard. I don't buy that one either, because number one, it seems like it's a pretty consistent percentage that like women only go for like the top 20% of men sort of a thing. But then the other thing is that a lot of women stopped working during the pandemic. Like the labor participation rate among women declined significantly during the pandemic. And you didn't see a big rise in people getting married and having kids and so forth during the pandemic, did you? It's just a lot of women just dropped out in general. Although that could be already married women with children and they can't afford childcare or something like that. That's something that's happening. It's actually a number of places where I'm seeing that like there's not enough childcare places. They can't even like they can't even get into a daycare. It's not just that it's too expensive, like there's just not even availability in their area, which is like bonkers, but it's kind of like almost kind of ironic that it's like, there's not enough. If all of the women work, there's not enough women to do any kind of daycare, even if it's like one woman to multiple childs. That's kind of a problem, isn't it? right? But no. What I think matches up with the data the most is that singleness has been on the rise since the advent of the sexual revolution and birth control. That's what it is. So my conclusion is people need to stop being hoes. You stop being hoes, that would fix the problem. That's my conclusion. And so I think about Lauren Boebert, and I'm like, well, I guess it's not unreasonable if you're dating somebody to let them fill you up. But even amongst conservatives, I feel like that there's just too, the general socially accepted practice is that it's okay to have sex before marriage if you're in a committed relationship. And I think that that's the whole problem. you know what I mean? She's in the middle of a divorce too. Well, can I pontificate about the divorce thing too? The way that divorce works in a lot of states, especially conservative states, is, in my opinion, really problematic, because basically what happens is the people that are getting divorced are locked out of the support networks that would really help them. So the support networks that would really help them all exist within the single community. And if you're not allowed to interact with the single community until the divorce is finalized and everything, that's a problem. Like you just never get to it. And I've seen that in for real, where there are people that whether it was things that they just did with their interpersonal relationships while they were getting divorced, or what they did with lawyers and things like that. If they had been, in the single community, like the Facebook groups and things like that, they would have done different things. So I'm really an opponent of these laws that like make it take a long time to get divorced. It's more of a test drive than anything else. I don't know. Like, the thing is with Lauren Boebert is that she's like, she said that what happened was not in line with her values, right? And I'm like, but is it really? Is it really? Because it kind of seems to me like you might end up having premarital sex, like, and you know what? If she was sleeping with her, I don't think that any Republican would care. Because even if you yourself think that you should wait until you're married, the societal expectation is that you don't have to. And so I don't think that people hold it against you if you do it before you get married anymore. You know? I mean, I don't consider myself to be a traditional religious conservative, but she was still being trashy AF in public to me. I don't even remember a whole lot about what Lauren Boebert has done politically. I know that she's one of those really, really, really far right Republicans, but still. Do you see where I come from? That like, I've been trying to explain over the past week or two, because I don't think that I've done a good job showing where I come from, because I do not feel like my political view is very common. We'll put it that way. I don't think it's very common, because I don't believe in a lot of these right-wing, so think of it this way. There's 4 types of conservatism, okay? Mitt Romney, he mentioned 4 forms of conservatism, right? Social conservative, foreign policy conservative, economic conservative, right? Well, I am definitely a social conservative, okay? I think that the introduction of the pill and sex outside of marriage becoming less taboo is resulting in all of the imbalances that we are seeing in the dating market and birth rates and all of that in general. Okay. Foreign policy conservative is kind of a little bit of an enigma, because I don't know if the social foreign policy conservative is actually a thing. Does being a foreign policy conservative mean that you are pro military industrial complex? Because it kind of seems like some people present it as that, but then other people were presented as a foreign policy conservative means that the United States just doesn't get involved where it shouldn't, which, you know, is not a policy that you've seen since before World War II, because the conclusion that people came to after World War II was that the foreign policy conservatives that didn't want the United States to get entangled in any kind of foreign policy stuff were wrong. So that one I don't know about. An economic conservative, well, if economic conservative is Milton Friedman and what happened during the Reagan years and everything, then for the most part I'm on board. But I don't think that what I typically see on the far right as economic conservatism is really that. On the far right, instead of economic conservatism, what I see is Austrian economics and proponents of tariffs. That's what the far right economic conservatives are. And I don't see it like that. I think that the Federal Reserve is a well-proven, effective, and necessary institution. I don't necessarily agree with every decision that they make. I certainly think that there could be things in the structure there that could be improved. But I still think that it's a necessary institution. I also believe in Keynesian economics. I think that the wealth of knowledge and data that we have suggests that, yes, you can inject stimulus into the economy effectively in order to blunt economic cycles. However, I also believe in supply side economics, which is to say that if all you do is stimulate demand, the net result is usually inflation. And so if you want to have, if you want to actually make people's lives better, you want to blunt economic crisis and improve the standard of living of people, you need to do both supply side and demand side economic stimulus, right? You need to increase the capacity of companies to build things, and you need to make it easier for people to buy things. And the combination of those two things together, working together, can generate long-lasting, sustainable economic activity. And well, all we did was demand, and the supply couldn't keep up. And now we're looking at a period of not just, 2 years of inflation, but possibly 5 to 10 years of extended inflation. And this has been very, very bad for the lower classes in particular. Middle and lower class people. It's been really bad for them. So that's like how I look at it from an economic perspective. So I don't know if I'm necessarily an economic perspective conservative. I'm definitely not a liberal. The fourth kind is cultural, actually. So a cultural conservative is basically you use conservative ideas like a reverence for the past to promote your message. So this is one of the things that I think people get really, really big wrong when they're trying to categorize different movements, as they say, well, that's what they did in World War II Germany, so that must mean that they're fascists. Well, no, like fascists were culturally conservative, but were liberal in pretty much everything else policy-wise. They were social conservative and they were cultural conservative, but they were not conservative economically, okay? So that's where I come from. Like to me, I'm conservative because I'm like, well, you can't just come down and change. Like, radical change does not work. I'm anti-radical. There's a lot of things that we do know. We do need to change the system, but we need to make smart, well-crafted changes over time to morph the economy into what we think will be more effective. And that's where I come from, and I don't see that. I don't see that among anybody. And it's, here I come over to, okay, so are the far right conservatives, the populists, are they socially conservative? I don't think that they are. Otherwise, I think that people would, I don't think that Lauren Boebert would be doing that, and I think that people would be more upset about it. But on the same hand, I'm still a little bit perplexed as to why it's a story. That's kind of weird. Opinion on what's happening in Italy with 10K African men that invaded the... Well, I don't know anything about that particular incident, but what I will say is that in general, when individuals or communities deal with immigration, it's usually has a negative impact on their community. And the more that communities feel the impacts of mass immigration, the more that they will oppose it. And what has happened over the past year is that it has come loose. It used to be that only certain, communities, like if you're in Italy, the places where all of the immigrants are landing, those would be the places where you would be like, immigration is a problem, and then like everybody else is kind of like, oh, it's not a big deal. And what's happening now is it's filtering out to everybody, and all communities are being impacted, and you're seeing a big shift in people, let's say rightward, but against immigration and favoring stronger immigration laws and stronger borders as a result. We're losing what you're talking about. So to be more specific about it, here in the United States, it was just Texas. It was just border towns in Texas that were feeling the effects of immigration. By the way, they have a pretty strong border wall up in San Diego, so San Diego hasn't been getting the same influx of people. There wasn't a border wall in San Diego, I bet you that they'd all be coming up through San Diego, and then California would be having a huge problem, right? Now what's happening is they're busing these immigrants all over the country, and like New York is being flooded, all these other countries are being, all of these other cities are being flooded, and the places that were like, we're places where, what do they call it? Asylum cities or whatever? All of a sudden they're like, oh no, actually don't come here. Actually, no, don't come here. And so what you're seeing is just, it's inevitable. It's inevitable that the more people that are directly affected by immigration, the more that people will turn against it. And what that means for the political machinations in the country, I don't know. Because Democrats have been pretty, like, brazenly, the more people that we can bring in through the border, the better it is for us, because those are people are going to vote for us. It's shifting, and I wonder at what point it's untenable for the Democrats to continue that policy. And this is an important one because it does have significant economic impacts, right? The other thing is that with inflation being a problem right now, because one of the things that hurts Americans from immigration is creates more labor supply, and so people don't, wages don't go up as much, right? Now not having inflation around it kind of helps subdue inflation, so that's good, and so you can kind of like get away with it for a while. But if inflation is going up anyways, I think that then inflation, like that just leads to even more people being unhappy, to more discontent, let's say. What's your radar thinking here today further south? Well, I do think that later on there could be another wave to the sell side, yes. So far, I think I read the map of the liquidity and everything pretty well, that we did end up getting a little bit of a hole at 09.5. You can see that 16,000 traded at 09.5, 14,000 at 09, and they've had trouble getting below that. So I guess the larger point that I'm trying to make is that because there's like different legs of like liberalism, conservatism, etc., 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 you kind of end up in a situation in politics where like almost everybody is unhappy about the political situation no matter what. Right? And you end up with some of these bizarre things that I'm not sure completely make sense. Like that the media is so obsessed over the Lauren Boebert thing. I've seen a lot of stuff about that. Doesn't seem like something that normally they would be interested in. Holy Trinity, Mrs. Friedman, Hayek. Like this is the thing on economics is that there's like this Austrian school of economics. And there's a bunch of people on the far right that are basically take the position that Keynesian economics is dumb and that we should follow the Australian school of economics, essentially. And I don't agree with that at all. I don't think that that's necessarily conservative. Really, I feel like the Australian school is basically like, we don't really actually know what's going on, because it's not scientific. There's not data science to it, It's like data science was too complicated for them or something. I'm not saying that that's like what the people that invented it believe, but like for the people that follow the Austrian school of economics, Australians or whatever it is, I feel like data science is too much for them. Client asks his advisor, where should I invest my money? He replies, put it on booze, the advisor says. Where else are you going to get 40%? I'm not sure I completely get that joke. Are we talking about the alcohol percentage content? Isn't that like 0.4%? Anyways. I think I'm too autistic to get that one, D. I'm not really autistic. I'm too ADHD to understand that joke, I think. Well, coming over here and looking at Zero Hedge and looking at what the stories are today. Top story, how do you lose an F-35? US military can't find stealth jet after mishap. That one is a little weird to me, that like it's clearly crashed somewhere. They can't find it. What? Well, impact of global rate rises yet to be felt in markets, perhaps, because it is lagged. How did I get on that whole long conversation explaining my politics? Oh, yes, because we're talking about Rumble. Right. So anyways, the other thing that I see is that people get into this thing where it's like, unless they like 100% agree with what the speaker is saying, they don't want to watch them. Right? Like, especially on a stream, because to some extent when you're watching a stream, you're kind of like giving someone permission to think for you a little bit. Like you're reflecting over the words that I'm saying in your head. For trading, I think that that's useful, right? But it's also kind of okay, well, if I don't agree with them politically, that's information that's going through my mind that my mind is processing that has an influence on me. You got to be careful about what kind of content you consume. And that's why I don't really like to view content that is overtly political, which is to say, I don't try and push the content out here like, I think that you are supposed to agree with me. What I'm saying is, I think that what I'm saying might help you understand the world a little bit better, right? So people, break off into these domiciles, and I think that the domiciles that people go off into are just nuts. They're just nuts. And one of them is Rumble. So like, what I see is, yes, it would be very good to have a website that you can post videos to that is not YouTube. Yes. But it's a problem if that site becomes overly ideological. Because then there's a person like me that would have every reason to participate on a website like that, right? And I see no interest in doing so because I don't really think that there's the audience that I want is over there. Because the audience that I want are people that are interested in understanding the world, working towards building a better society, and are interested in empiricism. I think that empiricism is the key defining feature, like the thing that I think has kind of helped us to get to society to where it is today, and the thing that is like most under attack. And the thing that will help you the most in your trading. Empiricism. And I don't think that those people care for empiricism. They'll say, well, you trust this study or that study, but like they're the ones that are in charge of the data. And it's like, well, no, because it's empirical. So you can go back and verify it for yourself, and you can conduct your own research. And if your own research doesn't reflect the same data, then you know that there's something wrong, right? You can disprove what they're saying, right? You don't have to trust experts if you are able to analyze and conduct your own research to produce empirical data. Have you had? No, I haven't. You know what? I think I wasted a lot of time this weekend, to be honest with you. Well, I felt really productive on Saturday. I've been having this problem. You know what happened was that the kids, we go and buy some diapers because my 3.5-year-old is not potty trained. He does, anytime I take him in there, he does no interest in the toilet. I don't know how, he might not be able to be potty trained until he's 5, to be honest with you. But he gets the box of diapers and opens up every bag of diaper in there and just throws them everywhere, man. Oh, it's just nuts. Can't get anything done with diapers everywhere. So what I went and did is I found a cedar chest on the classifieds, cleaned it up a little bit, and put all of the diapers in that, and then put a lock on it. So that's what I did on Saturday. And then on Sunday, I guess I had time to do things, but I kind of rested. I'm kind of in an in-between space where my gut medication, I ran out, and I think it's supposed to come in today. So I get tired really easily. Like, I have the energy, but my body wants me to slow down because it thinks that it's under attack. So, yeah, I didn't do anything. What were you when you truly? Well, I don't know if it works like that. I think that I remember my dad relating things about what happened in history, and particularly during World War II and so forth, at a very young age, like between 5 and 8 years old. And I also remember getting ready for school in the morning and watching Good Morning America. Like, I remember being a kid in like junior high or high school, whatever, and the who was it? It was the first guy to. He was running to be Democrat nominee, and he did like this war scream at a rally, and people disliked the war scream so much that he lost the primary after that. It was like really crazy. And I think that's how Al Gore ended up being the nominee, if I recall correctly. So I've been like watching news from a very, very young age. And then I definitely remember arguing about the Iraq War. I think overall, though, that I was wrong about the Iraq War. I mean, I was totally okay with going in and everything. And the more that I look at it today, the more that it seems like that it was a wasted effort. Afghanistan maybe is a different thing. Although it would definitely be a different thing if Biden hadn't just like pulled out. Or if, even if Donald Trump was president, he might have pulled out. So the way that went was terrible. Okay, maybe we should stay there a little bit longer. But in Iraq, they basically didn't want us there. They pushed us out eventually. Don't think that we should have. I don't think that we really gained a whole lot from going in there. When I was 6, war broke out in my country on the first day of preschool. Jeez, dude. That's rough. That's rough. I'm guessing that must mean that you were in Serbia. That's what that sounds like. What I know about the Kosovo War is actually really insane. Croatia. Gotcha. Wait, do I have things mixed up? What was the Croatia War? The Croatian War of Independence was fought from 1991 to 1995 between Croat forces loyal to the government. Yeah. Oh, I gotcha. Oh, but that was with Yugoslavia and stuff, yeah. Anyways, my understanding is that in some of these countries, and maybe I have them mixed up with, maybe I have Croatia and the Serbian War mixed up, but it was like just all of the sudden, individual communities like barring themselves up and posting armed guards and stuff like that. It was just like if you live in the suburbs, suddenly people being concerned enough about their community that they put up a roadblock and have armed guards at the front and stuff. Like, it was like community against community, and it happened really quickly too. From like typical suburbia to like war zone in the course of like 2 or 3 years. That's wild. I think that here in the United States that we've been so stable, there was the Civil War, but that was the last major conflict over here, right? Things have been so stable in the United States that we really don't understand how quickly things can go south. Like, society is a fragile thing. And too many people take for granted that society will always be there. No, not even close. Yugoslavia was a prison. The jailbreak happened, so to speak. Okay. I think that would be a place where my knowledge of the history is not as good as it probably should be. Is brewing since its inception. Well, the thing is, to see like the stability and everything, you just go back to Ukraine, okay? Like Ukraine, but here's the thing, is when we think of like the United States going into another country, right? We're always thinking about the United States going into some backwards third world country, right? Like Afghanistan or places in Africa, for instance. Ukraine is not that different from the United States. I mean, they aren't as wealthy in the United States, of course. There's a lot more ruralness in Ukraine, for sure. But they have real cities. I've had people that come and watch my stream that were from Ukraine and from Russia. These are like developed areas. And then just all of the sudden, that's why it makes me so mad when people try and say that like what Russia did was somehow justified. Like, I can understand saying that Russia felt. I don't think that it's like a correct reaction, but in their minds they felt that they needed to push back against NATO expansion, I guess you could say. But nothing justifies going and just laying carnage to entire suburban or urban areas. Like some of those cities are just completely demolished. It's nuts. It's absolutely crazy. And for freaking what? Like what does the end game look like for Russia? Like how, I don't think the world is that much different for Russia if they control Ukraine or not. Except for that, if they try to take control of Ukraine and lose, then their country is screwed. But it's just nuts. It's just, the whole thing is nuts. Well, the US tried to do the same to Cuba. So this is one of these things. So let me tell you about society, okay? I don't think that we always consciously understand the ideas that our society is actually founded on. I think that some of the ideas that our societies are founded on are so foundational and basic that like we aren't even aware of it. Because when we think about what are we founded on, it's like the Constitution, for instance, right? But the Constitution is kind of like a religion to some extent. This is like we believe these truths to be self-evident, right? They're not making a logical argument for them or anything like that. But when it comes to like how do you run a society and build a society, there's some of these ideas that are so basic that they're like programmed into us as a child, and we never even think about them. So much to the extent that like some people didn't pass them on to their children, and now we're starting to have battles over some of these very foundational principles, right? So one of the things that I would say that I would teach my kids is this: violence is an ineffective form, or is ineffective at resolving interpersonal conflicts. You have a beef with somebody and then you start a fist fight, and then, that's the conflict is over or whatever. It doesn't work that way. Almost always results in somebody else wanting to get revenge, escalation, and then you end up with like large groups, generations of people being at each other's throats for something that could have been resolved through other means. Okay, so and the problem is that when you start having violence like that, other people are like, oh, there's violence in here, this isn't a safe place to be, I'm going to go and leave. And then you have all of the economic problems that result from that. So if you want to build a society, if you want to build a strong, prosperous society, it is important for you to reduce violence, to eliminate violence in your communities. And so this kind of foundational principle in Western society is essentially that violence is a tool only to be used by the government. It's really what it comes down to, isn't it? The way that we think about it is that violence should only be used by the government. Should that be the case? I don't know if I don't know. That's a philosophical one that I don't know if I should deal with, right? But it's a thing, right? Because there are some people that don't agree with that. There are some people that don't see that. And so, for instance, they think that there are some situations where it's okay for you to use violence to achieve your political means, right? To try and convince people to vote your way, or to try and have some sort of a large ideological change. That's basically like what Antifa is doing. They think it's okay to use violence against a certain group of people to try and stifle them, right? And then you get these communities where you have the violence and everybody leaves those, and these cities are like going kaput because they say violence is okay sometimes, right? So yeah, in Western society, the view is that violence is a tool to be used by government. And there's not really any kind of like, when is it okay and not okay to use it? It basically turns into, if it would be better for us as a country, then it's okay to use violence. That's basically the way the United States thinks about it, to be frank with you guys. And so, yes, the United States used violence in many instances. They really tried to goat the president multiple times into starting a war with Cuba. They did, 100%. Bay of Pigs and all these other things. Yeah, totally happened. And there's plenty of other times where, there's revolutions and they were backed by U.S. people. Although in a lot of those instances, it was like, well, it looks like there's going to be a coup there, so we better help them anyway so that they'll be friendly to us. There was a lot of that. Yeah, they totally do it. They totally do it. Is a tick chart the same as a tick rotation? I'm not sure. So a tick chart is basically like every time that there's a piece of data or basically a new trade, that's a tick. And then, you say 1,000 transactions, and then we make a new bar. And it's a way to try and deal with some fundamental issues with charts, where basically like, because we get this movement, right? And there's liquidity holes and all this, that, and the other sort of a thing. And so you could end up in a certain place for a really long time, and that screws up your chart when you're looking for the patterns. And so their idea is to try and normalize things by using volume or ticks to make something that's not time-based so that you can see the patterns more clearly. That's like the main purpose behind them. That's why it's kind of like they don't really serve a purpose, in my opinion. I don't think that you really get anything from them. And there's a big problem with backtesting those kinds of charts, because basically what happens is the more transactions there are, the more bars there are. And so your algorithm is more likely to be taking trades during fast action. It basically biases your algorithm towards trading in times where the fills aren't going to be as good, essentially. Right? Because there are more ticks when there is volatility. Ergo, you are more likely to get a signal when there is volatility. And there's less liquidity when there's volatility as well. So it biases your algorithm towards backtesting in an area where the fills are less likely to be realistic to life. So that's why I kind of like, I don't really pay attention to them. I like range charts, but I don't even use that anymore. Oh, so what was this? Peter says they are probably right. Unless they conquer everything they are set to conquer, they will collapse. Well, I don't know about that. So here's another foundational principle. I wouldn't say that this is like a foundational principle of the West, but I would say that it is a foundational principle of the postmodern world. Is that it is better to have diverse groups of people working together. So I'm going to say something a little bit controversial here, okay? I think that white people misunderstand the kind of fundamental argument disagreement that's going on in the United States as it pertains to race. Because the way that we tend to think of it is, oh yeah, we did do some bad things in the past. We did exclude people from positions of power and from our networks and things like that because of race, and that was wrong. And so what we're going to do is we're going to change that, and we're going to say, okay, we are now allowed to be involved. Come and join us. And that's what especially like white Republicans think. Okay. The problem with that is that you're basically saying, come and be like white people now. They don't want to be like white people, because I think they still want to be their own race. And you know what? They are right. America is a stronger country if you have different groups of people that are maintaining their cultural identity to some extent. Think of a culture as like the training data set, right? Your mind is a neural network. You come in and you put a training data set that is kind of like the basis for how you interact with the world. Okay. Now, people's brains are different. So, and your circumstances are different and everything. And so the culture is kind of an attempt to be like, this is what was effective for us, right? So the culture that I'm going to pass on to my kids is going to be very different from probably what you do with your kids, because I'm ADHD. And so a lot of what I'm teaching, the principles and stuff that I'm teaching them, are how to deal with being ADHD, like meticulous planning and so forth, is write everything down, because we just don't have the ability to keep track of it like other people do, right? That's kind of part of the culture, right? Now, the split side of that is that things can get ingrained into your culture that aren't effective. For instance, one of the things is violence okay to solve interpersonal conflicts, right? Because in many southern rural communities, like white trash people, they think that it's okay, and then what is the term that we use? The black community kind of picked that up from them, but that's something that does not work in your favor, right? So there were cultures in the past, like frankly the Romans, that were basically like, we need to conquer everybody. And since that time, we have kind of realized, and I'd say that it's not like everybody's on board with this, but this is the thought that tends to dominate foreign policy and so forth, is that we do need to have different perspectives, that it's good to have an Earth that has different cultures on it. Right? See, it's the study of society and culture. It's not only is it an interesting thing, but that interest will ultimately help you in trading, because trading in economics is essentially the engine of society, right? That's what we do. Yeah, who is Peter though? Peter who? Peter, are we talking about Peter Ducey, the guy that's like supposed, or Zyhan? Yeah. No, he's not right. That's not right. Well, okay. So Peter Zyhan does provide a key insight into there, which is that is what the Russians believe. Yes, the Russians believe that unless they recover all of the Soviet sphere of influence, that their society will collapse. That's what they believe. Number one, I don't think that that's true. If Russia had taken the perspective of what I'm saying, which is you work together with other cultures that are different from you, and it's that coalition of different cultures together becomes extremely strong. right? If Russia could be friendly with all of their neighbors instead of like their neighbors constantly being afraid that they're going to come in and attack them, and this enmity between them and NATO that frankly doesn't need to exist anymore, then there'd be no problem. And they would be able to resolve those issues together with those countries without having to like take them over by force, right? But that's what the Russians believe. It's a very important thing. It is a very important thing to try and understand what Russia is doing, to understand that Russia is basically dominated by a culturally conservative regime that believes that they need to conquer these certain areas for the good of their country. Otherwise, their decisions don't make sense. Yeah, strong big from 11.5. So this more recent one, after 12.5 or so, has me a little bit, So like, is that the high? That's not the high of the session though, is it? No. We're just retracing. The high of the session is 16. So after 16, that might change some things. In general, we come back over here and we look at the dollar. This move appears to be pretty heavily correlated with the dollar. The actual flow to the long side is not very much. In fact, what it looks like is mostly the correlation moving it, and probably the guys that did end up getting short down in here puking. So there is a little bit of puking, but I think it's the correlation that's primarily driving us. Although the dollar has pulled back here and the treasury is still pushing. But the way that this played out, I'm not very interested because number one, I was looking for the flows to be short. So I'm definitely like paying more attention to flows that go short. And if I get a flow that's, well, if we move that far up, then it's kind of like turns into, I'm not sure I know what's going on, and I'm just, so I don't trade it, right? But what we see in here, I think, is still within reason of, there's not really strong flows today, and that it's actually more market making stuff just kind of pushing across the range. Now, the exception to that is that if we start pushing above 16 and we really start to get some strong flows in here, then it could be very different, right? Was the downside driven more by Canadian numbers? I don't know. Well, there was Canadian numbers. No, I don't think that makes sense. I think that this flow started about, I don't even know if I could say that at the bottom of the hour was when it. So like at 6, 7, 10 my time, 9, 10 Eastern time was when things started, when we bottomed out. But they really didn't pick up until the last 15 minutes, right? When we like really moved. And you don't see it in the dollar, but you do see it in the Japanese yen. Yep. You do see it in the Japanese yen. So this could be okay. There's the level break set up at 15. It could be risk off general, yeah, because the S&P 500 is selling as this is happening. I'm kind of looking over here for like what has happened in the last 30 minutes that I might have missed.
So we are shortly expecting the Bank of England gilt sale results.
Joseph Wing, 15 minutes ago. This post looks at the latest flow of funds data and suggests the structural weakness in market liquidity has worsened. Dealer warehousing capacity continues to lag and regulatory costs are rising, and investor of last resort will be an ongoing Fed role. Good point. Champagne Yakov, $1 would go bid on risk off. This seems to be driven by the yen. So I wouldn't say so much that like it will always do that. But you are right that on average, when we're risk off, the dollar rises. So but I think that it's more that like the dollar pulled back here, and that didn't influence the treasuries at all. But the Japanese yen,
with the Bank of England selling £649.9 million of bonds in this auction, receiving
we have an auction.
Pounds in bids.
There's a UK auction, so it could be related to that. So there was a 5K order there, so I didn't take it. I don't think, if I was looking to mess around, then maybe, but I'm kind of looking at this now as like I may have to take a trade. But, and if I do have to take a trade, this level break setup is a 50-50 in this situation. But there was a lot that traded at 15, and there's a lot there at 16, and it's an even number, and it's the overnight session high. So I'm still wondering if we're going to catch the start of a real trend here. So I'm not really seeing the treasuries going long, and seeing the Japanese yen turn this hard makes me wonder. Yeah, well, I'm thinking of going long the treasury here. I'm thinking of going long the treasury because what I'm seeing kind of suggests that maybe the Japanese are doing something. So I was looking through. Magnitude 6.3 earthquake strikes Harare, Japan region. So a 6.3 is relatively large, right?
So in 10 minutes time now, at the top of the hour, do get the US NAHB Housing Market Index for the month of September. Forecast is a 49 on the prior 50.
Like a 6 is a moderate earthquake. Once you get into 7s, you're starting to get into really big, heavy earthquakes. So let's highlight this in... ...180 kilometers north of Japan, though, yeah. And we pulled back from the level break, so I think that still has me hands off. So I'm not 100% sure, but I'm gonna try making a guess here. My guess is that the Japanese yen was moving because of the earthquake, and that the rise in the yen will be short-lived. That's my guess. So rise will be short-lived. I could take, I'll do it on sim to track myself. I'm going to go short here and we'll see. And if I'm able to get this to work out a little bit, then that would be a sign that I understand what's going on well, and that might be a reason for me to take a live trade. Okay. I am seeing through all of this morning, it does seem like the treasuries are flattening a little bit here too, by the way. It just really short-circuited my society rants. So I was trying to get somewhere with this rant. So here's the thing that I've discovered. Okay, is that building a society is really difficult and kind of requires experience. Like it's one of those things that like you come into and you try a bunch. You know, you try and start a community and you try many different times and you have successes and failures. I was involved in many different communities and even like starting communities before I started this one, and I think that I'm only able to be successful in running what is essentially the largest futures-focused free Discord, only because of that past experience that I had. Might seem like I don't do a whole lot when managing the Discord, but it's like really subtle stuff, and you learn to do those things. What I've learned, what I see in society, is that conservatives take it for granted. That like because the society is there and they assume that like the society will be there forever, they don't really think about building communal, structures like that. The left does all the time because the left wants to remake society, right? And the result is conservatives, they'll grow up and then realize that they didn't teach their kids very well. That's what happens. So that's where that was all going. If that's that initial training data
at the top of the hour,
that goes into your kids, that helps them understand how to interact with the society and the world, we should be very intentional about how we teach those things. That's going to be what gives them both the best chance of success in the future and the best chance of society continuing to progress. So it's an absolute imperative for us to think about these things and build them. And trading just kind of sits at an interesting focus point of that because, again, we're the engine of the economy. So we're in a position to understand these issues perhaps better than other people. And we're not necessarily in the best position to actually be like the big playmakers and really move. That's the president. President can have a huge impact on culture, right? But at the very least, we can be the ones that understand it and help teach others. I don't know, Jewy. I kind of feel like that where we go from here at this particular junction is probably a little bit of a crapshoot. Because again, we don't 100% know what the flow is that caused all of this upside, right? You're forcing it? See, like thinking about the one that Jewy is in, he's long 16 and he wants 18, but the highest amount of volume was 17. So while there is a good chance that they might come back to 17, it would be better to be taking 15 to 17, right? So that's why I feel like it's a risky play. And the thing is that when I take a trade, like if I'm going to take something like I see a liquidity hole and I think I can get something from here to here, I want to have a clear idea of which way is it going to go, right? Are we going to move up or down from here? Well, I'm making the judgment that we moved up so aggressively from about 12, let's just say from the open, because of the Japanese earthquake. And if the Japanese earthquake is not actually a big deal, and it does look like the Japanese yen is coming back down, once we realize that it's not actually a big deal, then the flow's going to go down, right? But I was not confident enough about that one to take it on my live account. So that would mean that we don't, -3. That means that we don't necessarily know enough about the trends to make trying to take a small little scalp in there worth it. Now for me, I'm kind of feeling like I should have taken it with more contracts because I would like to take one off here. But I already took one off. So should I just exit here at the open? I think I will. I'm just going to exit at the open.
1 minute remaining.
Oh, you're right. We do have stuff at the top of the hour. What is it? NAHB Housing Market Index. You know, if I had been paying a little bit better attention to my Twitter feed and had heard the Japanese earthquake news as it happened, I might have seen that flow in the treasury a little bit better and would have been more confident about that that's what it was. But then I guess the other thing is how do I know that it's really not a big deal? Well, you said it's 100 miles away from, at least from Tokyo.
45, lower than forecast 49.
Okay, no real reaction there on that news. Gonna give it a second here. Might want to go to a commercial here soon. This seems like an okay spot to do it, but look, they're continuing down. Dude, I think that that call that I made was a really good one. I guess I should have done it live.
Housing Market Index September.
It would have been $10. It's only $10 so far, so I'm not going to stress missing it too much. And I'm really not sure, are they going to be able to go all the way back to the lows or not? I guess we'll see. I'm going to take a quick break here, though, okay?
Just looking into this report here. So the chairman, Huey, says that on the supply side, builders continue to grapple with shortages of construction workers, buildable lots and distribution transformers, which is further adding to housing affordability woes, adding that insurance costs and availability is also a growing concern for the housing sector.
Okay, so here's my thinking at the moment. Let me show you on the chart. Okay, so we moved down, and there was only about a 5K or so change in cumulative delta to the move down. So I did not want to get involved down in here because I felt like that this was not necessarily indicative of an imbalance. Maybe it is, but it's not conclusive enough me to trade on its own in that particular situation. And I was also more thinking like after 7:30, what would be the changes once options kind of get involved, and there's the gamma and clenching and all of that, right? Okay, so then we saw this little spike right here. That was from the Japanese yen. Now notice cumulative delta is still flat, so nothing happened there. People did not buy in the treasuries because of that. So I think that this spike up was from the Japanese yen. And then, of course, that came back down. Now, here's the thing. If I'm a large meta order and I want to sell, that is a great opportunity for me to sell. And what did we see? About 6,000 net contracts. So we're still we have some evidence that there is perhaps a large meta order selling, but it is not strong enough for me to really be confident that like they will push it to new lows, for instance. And so I'm still kind of I think that we stay within this range here. I think we stay within this range. So for the moment, I'm still sitting on my hands in terms of not taking any live trade. See, for GWE, my recommendation is that we need to have a clearer indication that the flows are going to be going one direction before we take trades like that, because otherwise you just end up going against the trend every time and getting flattened, right? There was a little bit of something at 11. But this one doesn't look like it's going to be across the range. Like if you were to try and get filled long at 11, I don't think that would work. It's definitely been an unusual morning, though, hasn't it? Yeah. Do you think the last CPI report says anything about raising rates on Wednesday? Well, so the Federal Reserve is unlikely to raise rates on Wednesday. Let's come and look at the Fed tool real quickly. CME interest rate tools.
So just keep in mind, U.S. Treasury Secretary Yellen currently speaking in a CNBC interview.
Fed Watch. There should be like a cool, jingle or whatever for the Fed Watch tool, Oh, geez. Okay. So for September, they are currently pricing a 99% probability that they will not raise. Okay. But let's look. Does that hold for November? 71% chance that they hold for November. 60% for December. Then January. So the market thinks that they will hold rates through the end of the year and then maybe start raising in January. So isn't that interesting? So I think that when I look at the last CPI report, what I see is, yes, inflation has come back, but it's not to 2%. And at what point does the Federal Reserve say we need to raise rates more because 3% is not okay? We need 2%.
We have a good, strong labor market. Worker demand is high.
That's kind of been the thing on my mind. That's part of why I've been kind of favoring shorts.
It's a live video.
And
Yellen speaking.
you can kind of see that backed up in the structure of the options and the SOFR futures and all of that they use to calculate this FedWatch tool. Overall, I didn't really see anything in that last report that seemed that interesting to me, but not from what I can recall. I've been seeing tweets about CTA flows mentioning up tape, down tape, flat tape. What do these numbers mean? This is an excellent question. Okay, so CTA stands for Commodity Trading Advisor. And generally, the way that CTA strategies work is they use momentum. Okay. Now, retail traders, we often confuse momentum and trend. We think momentum is just another word for trend, but it is not. The way that a momentum strategy works is you have a basket of assets and you go long the assets that are doing the best and you go short the assets that are doing the worst. Okay. So it kind of has a little bit to do with trends in a way, but really it has more to do with which thing is moving the most on a percentage basis. Okay. So what these models do is they come out and they say, okay, if we move up, is there a certain point at which these CTA strategies say, oh, this asset is up the most, I need to allocate my money into that asset, or they need to shift their allocations, right? And so they create these models that kind of say, okay,
the labor market.
If we move up this much, this is how much money will have to come into the market because of the CTAs. Okay. So CTAs are a potential flow that you should think about, that you can say, and I think probably you're talking more about the equities markets, right? So they're saying there's these key CTA levels where if the S&P 500 gets above or below that, it could probably continue to push the market. Yeah, those are absolutely things that I would look at to try and predict which way your particular market is going to go. Just the problem is getting reliable numbers about that. Like there are banks and analysts that publish that kind of information, and you'll see it like on Zero Hedge, but we don't get it like every day. And so that's kind of one of the difficulties that we have. But every once in a while, we'll get a situation where we know what the CTA positioning is likely to be, and we can see what the market is doing. Like you could have done that on when we were having the really big, most recent rise up, you know, short covering and CTAs was a really big part of that melt up when AI was a big thing and all that. So
says I would expect to see some impact of Fed tightening already seen in the house.
So if you want to learn more about that, I would search about commodity trading advisors and about momentum strategies. I should probably learn more about momentum strategies.
And Yellen says, I think we're achieving lower inflation. So again, Yellen there says, I think we are achieving.
Do you think 2% is not possible? I don't know. So part of me does kind of think that the only way that they would be able to get inflation back to 2% is with a recession. I'm not so sure that you can have 2% and the soft landing. But let's see. I think there's a new norm because banks can't handle rates keep increasing. We should stay high for about 6 months and then we start cutting late next year. But that's so I disagree with you on there because what we have seen so far is yes, the banks can't handle the rates increasing. You're right. The small regional banks, if interest rates went much higher than here, like if we were at 4.5% on the 10-year, that would be a really big problem for a lot of these regional banks. Yes, it would. But that doesn't result in the Federal Reserve reducing interest rates. Instead, what they do is they print money and make other policy changes and give it to the regional banks. So that in and of itself, I don't think results in lower rates unless it results in larger contagion that starts to push the market into a recession, right? But your larger conclusion that's like we should stay high for about 6 months and then start cutting late next year, that really is what the current data suggests. But there's still kind of this like open issue of, yeah, but what about us being at 3%, right? So like right now they're kind of looking to see, well, does inflation actually come down? But if inflation stays where it is now, and we don't get a recession or anything, and then we come back to like January, February, March of next year, and things are basically where they are today, then that would start to shift. And then maybe they'd start to think, well, maybe they're going to raise rates again. Maybe they're going to, I can already say that the market pricing has changed, because like 3 months ago, they were not pricing rate increases at the end of the year. They were saying that they were going to hold it steady and they were going to start reducing rates possibly as early as January, although that was probably more like the way that they price things with probabilities more than an outright call, which is probably also to some extent what they're doing with this long is they're saying there's a good chance that in the next 6 months that the Federal Reserve actually raises again, because the ECB just raised. No. Well, you would think they would want to increase wages? No. Because increasing wages tends to put more pressure on inflation. I saw this guy talk. There's a guy I follow on LinkedIn. I don't want to necessarily give names because I don't want everybody to go and follow him. But he was talking about as kids, they would play, when they were playing pretend. And one of the things that he did when they were playing pretend is he was basically the bank. Because the kids would need money to like go to the store and buy things, essentially, right? And what he realized very early on was, oh, I can just put out as many dollars out there as I want, right? But he immediately knew when you're dealing with amounts that are so small and only a handful of people, like there's 4 kids playing or something like that, right?
There's no reason.
You immediately realize, okay, if I put all of this money into their hands, they're going to go out and buy all of the stuff that their friend has available at the store. And then what? Right? Because basically, all of this stuff is bought, and they have nothing to do with all of the dollars that you just gave them. Then you get inflation, right? Because there's less things and there's more dollars. So it kind of puts things in perspective. Yeah, the more money that people make, the more, especially when it's on the lower end of the scale, the more it's going to tend to increase prices. Like really, it would be really bad to have an asset that constantly increases in value, because then you can't borrow, right? If you borrow and the value of money is always going up, you'll never be able to pay it back. So in order for people to be able to pay back debt, you need to have a currency that declines over time. So that 2% inflation over time is necessary. Now, is 2% better than 3%? Well, that's like a really key question that the financial world doesn't really have a good answer for.
Geopolitics citing Ria as Russia.
Right.
Summons the French ambassador.
Should have held your longs. Well, they did come back, didn't they? Although my read on that one is, yet we are still within market maker shenanigans, and there isn't actually a strong meta order either way. So I don't necessarily want to touch it. So you want to know why the inflation target is 2%? The reason the inflation target is 2% is because it makes the math easy. Because if it's 2%, then that means that the coupons, so the treasuries coupons pay out twice a year. So if they pay out twice a year and the yearly coupon rate is 2%, that means that each time you get paid from the coupon, you get paid $1,000.
Make sure we keep deficits under control.
Oops, sorry. Hope that didn't blast your ears. That's why the number is 2%. So what changes if it's 3%? We don't really know. But that's why you've got all of these people out there saying like, oh, we can't get back to 2%, so we should just change the inflation target and say we're okay with 3% now. Well, I think that would be very damaging for central bank credibility, but it is a possibility. It's a possibility that the central banks have rejected pretty vehemently, and yet it remains around. And when I go through all of that, then it makes perfect sense why, right? Because there's a really good chance that it is going to be 3%. And then what are you going to do? Is that 1% worth crashing the economy over? I don't know. I don't know, man. Oh. There we go. So when I look at everything and the cumulative delta and all that, I'm like, yeah, it doesn't look like anything's actually happening. It's not going anywhere. But then when I look at the DOM and I see how close it is to the high, I'm like, oh, maybe we're going to breach yesterday's high. Wow, wait, what? London Mayor Sadiq Khan is facing accusations of hypocrisy for accumulating over 430,000 air miles since 2016, enough to fly around the world 17 times. I don't understand why a mayor would need to travel that much. U.S. Secretary Treasurer Yellen, I think we're achieving lower inflation. Bitfinex tweets, story from the Wall Street Journal, New York regulator to ban cryptocurrency exchanges from listing fraudulent tokens that launder money for terrorist organizations. Oh, look, Tether is already on the list. Oh. Does that shift the United States over to you can only trade in dollars and destroy all of the Tether exchanges? That might actually be a big deal. That makes me wonder, given that there was a little bit of a pump today. And sometimes they pump going into bad news. It sure looks like that the crypto market is doing its best to ignore that, though. You know what? Ugh, excuse me. It's been about an hour now with the S&P 500. And it's been, within their opening range, essentially. So this unclenched, massive selling that I thought might come through in the equities, maybe we have to wait until the end of the day, but so far it's not happening. A 2% rate is set to stimulate investments and destimulate. Well, yeah, you cannot have debt in an economy with a rising currency. All of these, don't you find it interesting that over in the Bitcoin world, that basically every service out there that was trying to do staking or otherwise like lending and borrowing of money collapsed? you can't have debt in an economy where the value of the currency is always going up, because you'll never be able to pay it back. But the reason it's 2% and not 3% is because that with the treasury coupon, it means that you get $1,000 each time you get paid by the coupon. So people are still talking about the missing plane, by the way. We are in many ways coming up into an interesting time in interest rates, a time where we learn a few things, right? I mean, we were in an interesting time post-COVID. There was the study out last week that basically says that, yeah, greedflation wasn't the thing, and that companies actually, you know, despite what some of those top-line numbers had shown, that overall, throughout the whole thing, that companies weren't making a bundle of money from it all. That they were very much struggling to keep up with it. And that, yeah, inflation came from the factors that we said, that lots of monetary stimulus and supply chain problems. So that was kind of the big question. And I think that that's been pretty... I think that the observers are pretty confident, like, you know, they're going along with that, and they think that that's the correct answer. So it just kind of proves something that we already knew, right? Now we come into this question again. Is it worth in a recession to get inflation down from 3% to 2%? Can they actually make that happen? Can we get inflation down to 2% without crashing the economy? Well, I suppose if the answer is yes, they are going to ensure that we get to 2%, but they have to have a recession to get it, then I guess we don't actually learn anything. But oh, I missed that other comment. Well, that's an assumption. Some will spend, but a lot will save and invest. Yeah. You do have to, you want people to invest. Essentially, you want an incentive for people to put money into the market so that there's capital to do things. And assuming that we're making good investments, the more money out there is to invest, the higher GDP should grow, because the more innovation that's being generated from that investment. Except for that, the problem is that everything just goes into an index fund, and I don't think that the money necessarily goes to the best ideas. But that's better than nothing, right? The market is not efficient, but it is better than the alternatives that we have so far. My nose is itching a ton again today. And that just gets me thinking on these things like corporate stock buybacks. I'm still of the opinion that stock buybacks shouldn't be allowed. I think we've created too much of a problem where you make more money in the short term by pumping up your stock price with putting on debt and taking buybacks than you do from like running a good company. And the person who loses in that situation is you, basically. Whether it's you, the investor, or you, the worker, the people that make the money are like hedge funds and executives, and they run off with it all instead of growing the economy, essentially. Incentives are broken and do not promote people doing the thing that would be best for the continuance of society, essentially, right? And so I say, you get rid of stock buybacks, so we don't need them. And from there, we need to work out how we incentivize people to invest in companies, for the long haul. So it won't completely solve the problems. Oh, I guess the thing that got us on this whole topic of conversation, see my propensity to go into a bunch of things and then lose the plot and not come to the main conclusion. Yeah. But the key conclusion there was that rising wages do not help with inflation. And right now, the Biden administration is doing everything that they can to basically encourage unions to go on strike. And so you got that, you got oil, got a couple of things that seem to be conspiring to bring inflation back, doesn't it? It's not enough to be actively concerned, oh, I need to take my money out of the market, etc., etc., etc. But the forces are definitely out there conspiring against the economy, aren't they? And to that point, how does this relate to us right now? Well, we got a Federal Reserve meeting on Wednesday. They're not going to raise, but I kind of wonder if it's going to be a hawkish pause instead of a dovish pause. That they're going to say, yeah, we're not raising it today, but we're sure keeping a close eye on it. We're not going to let this happen. And if, we go to here, we're going to raise again. And it could be a hawkish pause. Wait, what's this? Mike Pence unloads on Romney. Trump says heartbeat bills are terrible. Okay, so this is interesting to me. Donald Trump dropped a bomb or two in his interview with Kristen Welker on her first day moderating Meet the Press. The interview, totally consistent with the genre of journalists pretending to be reporters while slyly or not inserting their own biases into the conversation. Trump, though, is more than capable of getting his message through simply because he pulls through on whatever obstacle is in his way. It's his superpower and his kryptonite, depending on the day. NBC spent enormous efforts fact-checking Trump during and after the interview, about as well as anybody in the media, quote, fact-checking these days, repeating DNC talking points. For the most part, by now, fact-check in media speak just means handing out the talking points for the people who are desperate to reinforce their Trump hatred. Clips of the interview are floating around and people are latching on to various moments for their own purposes. Trump's "what is a woman" moment has gotten a lot of attention. Although, to me, it isn't the gotcha that a lot of people hope it is. His answer was typically Trumpian when he doesn't want to answer, meaning people will read into it what they want to hear. The clip that got the most attention was the exchange on abortion, which was also typical of Trump, the let's make a deal version of Trump. It's difficult to argue that Trump's presidency wasn't good for pro-lifers. He managed to get 3 justices onto the Supreme Court, and in consequence, Roe v. Wade was overturned. This has been a dream of conservatives for decades, and it would be churlish in the extreme to not give Trump credit for doing something Republicans have promised to do for decades and failed. Abortion politics aside, the overturning of Roe have been pretty awful for Republicans. Overturning Roe was only one step in the battle to beat back the abortion industrial complex. Many Americans are frightened by the prospect of radical shifts in policy. At least some of that is due to terrible messaging on the part of conservatives. Yeah, and due in part to successful gaslighting of Democrats on the mainstream. Well, no, it's not that. It's like there are some people on the right that really just want to like even get rid of birth control, frankly. Okay. Trump, who likely was never personally pro-life, has pulled back on his support for the cause. As you can see in the interview, he dropped a very Trumpish let's make a deal proposal, getting everybody sitting around the table and hammering out a compromise. Everybody would be happy. Well, you know, I would totally be okay with like, hey, let's just ban late-term abortion. Yeah. As a Christian, even if Trump declared he is pro-abortion and his campaign sold my body choice shirts, my support for him won't change one bit. I'm down with whatever it takes to win the general election. I don't need him to convince me of anything or appease me like the immature holier-than-thou conservatives on this app want him to be. We already know his record and what to expect. We will build on his legacy of overturning Roe v. Wade, but we need to get him into office first by any means necessary. I don't know. So this is just another thing that is kind of really weird about Donald Trump is like he's a far right candidate, but like he's almost running to the left of all of the other candidates. He's running to the left of all the other candidates. And at what point do the religious conservatives come in and say, yeah, we're not going to support him, and throw their support behind somebody else like Ron DeSantis? I think it would be Ron DeSantis. There is a point at which it turns into a problem for Donald Trump, and I don't know if it's going to happen. And I almost kind of wonder, if, Trump is saying those things because he views them as, vulnerabilities in an election. Abortion. He doesn't want abortion to be an issue, so he's saying that so that it doesn't become an issue. Like he's already running the general election. Are you a trade con? I don't know what that means. Oh, a traditional conservative? I believe that sexual promiscuity is bad for society. That's my main. I believe that sexual promiscuity is bad for society, and that having one parent at home watching the children is good for society. But beyond that, I have to say, like a lot of the things that you're like, what you would call these trad people on like TikTok and stuff say, I don't agree with. So that's why I'm trying to be very limited in what I say, like what I do believe. Because what I do believe is pretty far outside of the range of what most people believe today, right? To say that sexual promiscuity is negative for society is kind of like, it's funny because it's like, it is the traditional conservative opinion. Like, I think that you would get a lot of people to say that, yes, sexual promiscuity is bad for society. But the reality is that most people in society are promiscuous now. Most people have sex before they're married. Like, when you get down to it, most people have sex before they're married. It's just like, frankly, it's just the natural consequence of the pill. Is that if people think that they can have sex and that there's not going to be any consequences to it, they're going to do it. They're going to do it. You know? It's common sense, but it's not that common. Well, yeah, because there's a pretty strong, because the strongest incentive built into your brain works against it. Yeah. So like that's kind of the conundrum, right? Is that there would be no way to really shift back to a truly conservative sexual values in Western society without like banning the pill. And you're not going to ban, I mean, nobody wants that. I don't want that. Nobody wants that. So that kind of turns into this thing of like, how are we going to deal with this, right? Well, but I tell you what, when everywhere that I go on social media, I see kids complaining about how tough dating is and how impossible it is to get married and have kids and all of those sorts of things. And I live in an area that is still very much socially conservative, that the majority of people believe that you should wait until you're married before you have sex, and that marriage is primarily for having children. And as a result, we don't have those problems. We don't have those problems at all. Dating here in Utah, still pretty good. I mean, there's other problems, but you know, I was able to date 100 or 200 different girls within a year, right? And I'm not unusually good looking or rich or anything, or it wasn't unusually good looking or rich at the time. So like, why did that happen? Well, that was, the women are much more, if you are in line with their values, they give you a chance. Like, that's just the way that it is in Utah. And the dating market is so much better for it. Because basically everybody gets a chance to date a ton of different people. Why are you not trading the NQ Dom? Because the NQ Dom is the Widowmaker, and I like keeping the money that I make. Do you guys that trade I mean, I've seen people do it, and it sounds like they're reasonably successful with it, but I still think y'all's crazy. NQ is just, I've seen more accounts destroyed by NQ than anything. It's really funny that, like, especially beginning trader only considers the possibility of gain and not the possibility of loss. Like they'll go through and they'll say, okay, if I can make $1,000 every day, and then over the course of a year, that would be enough for me to live on. And they don't consider, though, that the most likely thing to happen, though, is that everything that you put into it, you lose. That's the most likely scenario. But we all fall into that. That's just the way that people think. And we all fall into that trap at first. Because I definitely, when I started out, I was like, okay, how much would I actually need to make on average per day to be able to live off of this? And how much of a wad would I need so that I know how much to save up for? That was how I originally approached it too. When really what you got to do is you got to say, this is going to take a long time. I want to trade as small as possible, have other forms of living, trade as small as possible so that I can trade long enough to figure it out. And I need to have consistent income coming in so that, you know, if I lose, I can still keep trading. People ignore numbers next to letters in futures contracts. By the way, the treasuries have kind of gone dead here at 13.5. So you know, it's kind of funny because it often comes through this that, like, I read it pretty good, but there's no trades in it for me. But I think we read the flow pretty good today. That speaks well to our chances later this week. I hope we get some good opportunities. You might, you know, I don't really like trading on FOMC day, but we might, especially after FOMC day, there's still a lot of flow, and we might get a good opportunity on Thursday. Okay, sorry, I was going through this thing. Anyways, the point of that story that I was reading was that there's still this possibility that social conservatives come in and decide to abandon Trump. But so far, they seem to be ignoring it. Okay. Now, here's another interesting one. Senator Mitt Romney is retiring. On his way out the door, there is a book coming out where Romney trashes some of his fellow Republicans, which I think is terrible for him, by the way. Like, at least wait a few years before you put the book out, Rom. Journalist McKay Coppin's upcoming book, Romney, A Reckoning, includes a slam against former Vice President Mike Pence and his performance in that office. Romney, the former governor of Massachusetts and currently the junior senator from Utah, made disparaging remarks about several of his colleagues in Washington, D.C. Romney is quoted in the book as saying, "No one was more loyal, more willing to smile when he saw absurdities, more willing to ascribe God's will to things that were ungodly than Mike Pence." Wow. He is claiming that Pence did not live up to his devotion to Christianity because he was loyal to Trump while in office, standing up for him until he didn't. Jeez, Rom. You know, the longer this goes on, the more it kind of feels like Romney is just bitter that he lost running for president and Trump won. Like, Romney is just bitter that he never became president. But you know why you never became president, Romney? Because you do stuff like this. Nobody can trust you. Because part of politics is something called loyalty, which is being loyal to somebody that you have pledged loyalty to, even when you don't want to. Just like you say loyal to your partner, and sometimes there'd be somebody really, really good looking that you would like to pounce, and everything tells you that you should just go and pounce that other person, but you're staying loyal to your partner. And there are, of course, limits on loyalty, but I really don't think that for the majority of Trump's time in office that he was doing anything that would justify disloyalty on Mike Pence's part. And Romney clearly never learned that lesson, and that's why he just changes political allegiances and is a flip-flopper and has never been loyal to anything, and nobody trusts him. That's why you didn't win, Mitt. You watching Mitt? Probably not. If only. You know, Mitt Romney is kind of like one of the things that got me into politics. That was the thing. It's like, well, in the beginning, I thought Mitt Romney would be a great president. He's like really good executive and all this sort of stuff, right? And then he lost, and I was like, okay, maybe he just doesn't have what it takes. And then then Donald Trump came along, and he's like, well, I don't support Trump because Donald Trump supports all of the policies that I claimed I supported when I was running for president. Oh, okay. So everything that you said as president was actually BS that your advisors made up and that you never actually believed? Okay. Okay. That's what got me into politics. So yes, I would love to give Mitt Romney a piece of my mind. You're a flip-flopper. You're not nearly as great as you think you are. Just because you don't like Trump and the rest of the party is going along with it. Do you believe? Yes. Of course I believe in God. But see, I wouldn't normally talk about, sexual promiscuity and things like that. Like, that's really far off the beaten path from trading, right? But the subject today has been more about what is a society, right? Well, what is a society? Where has the society been? Where is the society going? Where should it go? And the whole idea here is like, what is our ultimate purpose? Our ultimate purpose is to build society so that society can be better for those that come after us. And we, in the financial space, hold a particularly important position in the society in terms of helping to improve the society and make it better for the people that come afterwards, because we're the ones that are engineered and in charge of the economy, the engine for society. And the issue is that you cannot understand what is happening in society and why we're having the changes that we are and why we're having some of the struggles and so forth that we are without understanding the change that has happened in Western society when it comes to sexual issues, sexual morality. You just can't get around it. You just can't get around it. And the reality is in my opinion, we'd all be better off if people just were not promiscuous and only had sex within marriage. But obviously that's not going to happen. That's obviously not going to happen. So how do we deal with that? Gotta go, guys. Have a good one. Hey, thanks, Dewey. I hope that it was okay. Wasn't too bad for you today. Oh yeah, where you been, Ostrans? It's okay. You didn't. They were losers. Well, at least the two that I remember. And overall, we didn't really. I thought that I was going to have some trades today, but the flows did not cooperate, and I ended up not. I did take a sim trade that was really, really great. I should have taken that one live. I really should have. So when Ostrats has been messaging me a bit, and he was saying, well, why do you trade off of these news and stuff? And I was like, well, it's because of informational inefficiency. And he was like, well, what's that? So today we had a really good example. Informational inefficiency means I know something about what the future orders are likely to be that the rest of the market hasn't caught on to yet, but that they soon will. So what happened today? Well, we kind of moved down. This is like we're in a range, I think. So I'm not trying to take shorts here down at the lows. It comes back, and then all of a sudden there's this huge spike. Whoop. Huge spike. And note, by the way, cumulative delta didn't change. Huge spike here. Cumulative delta flat. What's with that? Well, it turns out that the move was driven by a related asset. It was the Japanese yen. Japanese yen had a little spike here. Okay, so that's our first clue. It's correlation. The flow is actually coming in from the Japanese yen. Why is money coming into the Japanese yen? And we go out and we read, and there was an earthquake. There was an earthquake in Japan. And so this move up was knee-jerk reaction from the earthquake in Japan. But as we read the story, we realized, okay, it's not a super major earthquake. It was like a 6.3, which is a big earthquake, but not like super crazy. And it was pretty far away from the population centers. And so it wasn't really a big deal. And so my call was that it's going to come back. That the spike in the Japanese yen is going to come back as people realize that it's no big deal. And that's exactly what happened. Now, at the time, I was really unsure as to whether or not it was actually about the Japanese yen. So there's a problem is it's hard to know when you know that you know. But that time I knew, should have taken it. But it was only worth $10 anyways. So it wasn't a huge deal. But there's an example of informational inefficiency at work. And on top of that, kind of been favoring shorts lately. Favoring shorts on the anticipation that markets become more concerned about inflation in the future as we're having difficulty getting inflation below 3%. And that is, when I take a trade, I want it to be based on something like that. I use Financial Juice. I should point out, though, that it's not always a news story, right? It's just a piece of information that suggests what the future orders are going to be that the rest of the market hasn't picked up on yet, but is about to pick up on it soon. So one of the things that I can use is information about the options, right? Options positioning. That can also help us predict future flows. I thought that maybe today it would result in some selling, but it's not happening. And I do kind of wonder if it was like they dumped, because we were above 4,500, they sold their stocks until they got to 4,500 or something like that. That's a question in my mind, but maybe we see selling into the close today. We'll see. But after the options expire, there's often this gamma unclenching where all of the options that they had bought or sold in order to hedge their gamma, they no longer need, and so they just dump it on the open market. Ah, yes, I did put the laptop video up on the laptop dock. So, I should have held it over here. I should have unplugged it and brought it over here. But BenQ sent me a laptop dock that allows you to plug 3 4K 60 or 3K 140 hertz monitors. So I'm able to plug all of my monitors into it. They all work at the higher refresh rate, all running off of the laptop. So if you have a good laptop and you're using this laptop dock, you can turn your laptop into a suitable battle station for trading. How much is it? Okay, so there's this one point in the video where I tell you how much it is, and I took it out because they changed the price and I didn't want to re-record. Because they I guess because of shipping or something like that, the price of it changed late in the process. What laptop? I'm using an MSI. I show it to you in the video. You can look at it. I don't know if that's what I would have bought myself. I guess maybe I should look into that, but it is a sweet. Okay, so the final price is $299. But I should note that this is like, okay, you get 3 monitors, gigabit Ethernet, and like 5 USB ports. So like everything about this laptop dock is like top of the line. This is like the nicest laptop dock you can find. Yeah, well, this MSI, I tell you what, it's freaking cool. Okay, I show it to you, the outside of it. You see in the video, it lights up. It's cool looking, and it does perform really well. In fact, I'd say at this time that in some respects my laptop is faster than this desktop PC. Like, in all seriousness. But you know, if I was buying it for personal use, there might be some other things that I might, you know, like I don't think that it's particularly, what's the word? Like durable. I don't think that it's particularly durable. It's not like made out of magnesium or something like that, like the Apple laptops are. But it's got good power. I tell you that. It works well. It's a great laptop. It's an expensive laptop, so that's the other thing, is that if I was gonna like recommend a laptop just for trading, I'm not quite sure what I would get. I've been looking around a lot because I've been thinking about getting a laptop for my wife, and I'm having a hard time deciding where I would want to go on the lower end of the laptop scale. But yeah, the dock is $300 essentially. I'd probably need to edit the description on it and add some things in there. But I've got a 1700X. Nah, she doesn't trade too, but I would still like, you know, the laptop that I get to be somewhat suitable for that sort of a thing. But really, she needs it for like to keep up on her finances. What I'm finding is that the further along in life I get, just the more difficult the finances are to keep up on. Because it basically, it turns into, I have to track and categorize like every transaction. Not because I don't, like we're cutting it close or anything like that. And I guess I could go into, yeah, it's fine. Whatever it is that we spend, we'd be able to afford it. Yeah, but I also make enough now that I have opportunities to do bigger and greater things, like save like massive amounts and stuff like that. And to do that, you have to keep track of the money better. So that's what we want it for. Yeah, I got to get going here in a minute or two as well, Strats. It's a display. What do you mean by a display? Yeah, it's a display link dock. So like display link is like the technology that allows them to plug multiple monitors in, but it's basically 2 HDMIs and 1 DisplayPort. What would be your minimum requirements? Well, so what I would look at more when you're looking for your laptop is, do they advertise it as being good for multimedia? So like if they have stuff that's like, this is really great to watch videos on, then that helps. If they say things like, this is a great laptop for editing videos on, like that's one of the things that you do on a MacBook. You can video edit on a MacBook really, really well, right? Those are the things that I would look for, because what happens in a laptop is one of your primary concerns in a laptop is power. And so what they'll do is the CPU will vary how much power it's consuming based on your current needs. And the problem with that is that the processor will move down into a lower power state because it doesn't need the processing power. And then like a big burst of volume will come, and there's that short period where the CPU is realizing that it needs to ramp up to a higher speed. And when that happens, that's when you'll get the hitches. That's when it's like your mouse will kind of pause for a split second, but that's just enough to screw you up, right? So if you're going to trade on a laptop, that's the biggest thing that you need to watch out for it's called, in Windows world, we call it DPC latency spikes. So you want a machine that doesn't give you DPC latency spikes. And that's going to come in the form of laptops that are more focused on multimedia. Okay. But then the other requirements beyond that, 16 gigabytes RAM, and otherwise just about anything that you get will probably be suitable. So, but that's where these other things come in, is like, okay, but what's the most durable? How important is the durability to you? Which kind of screen do you need? That sort of stuff, right? You want a 17-inch laptop? That's huge. That's too big for me. So that's that sort of stuff, right? So it is kind of difficult with the laptop world because there's so many options that would feasibly work. And it's hard to find out which one is really, truly the best deal. But the laptop that I show you in the video is super cool. It's super cool. I tell you that much. Yeah, memory, I think that you want 16 gigabytes of memory. The GPU, I don't think really matters too much, so long as there is a GPU. But, if it has any kind of NVIDIA GPU in it, you're probably fine. And the CPU as well. Like it's saying, I'm trading on a 1700X, right? They're at 7600. So my CPU is 6 generations old, and it handles trading like a champ. So just about anything that you buy. The problem is just on laptops, you can get like Chromebooks. Don't get a Chromebook, right? But that's why I'm saying focus on the multimedia aspects of it. Like look at what they say about how good it is for multimedia. And that will steer you clear of the laptops with CPUs that are just, focused on low power consumption and won't be suitable for your needs. And then when you do run it, when you do get the laptop, make sure to run in performance mode Like high performance mode instead of power saving mode. Or balanced. Don't do balanced either, okay? Guys, it's time for me to get going. I will see you tomorrow. In the meantime, stay excellent, team.